Hi, sorry, I've had a problem with this YouTube, and of course, I don't know why it's doing this today. Well, whatever. You know what? I'm just going to do it like this, by hand. And Susan's here. Hi, Susan, Angela, and Chris here. So we're going to do a vertical style video today.
Do you want to keep this one going?
And we're going to do this one as well. So hopefully I can figure something out. So anyway, hi guys. Christopher and Angela here with Dinosaur Omelette. We usually do this video horizontally. Today it's vertical because I couldn't, for some reason, change the setting. Angela's going to go look for a stand. Welcome back, guys. Hi. So I'm Chris, and we're doing Facebook and YouTube live at the same time. And tonight's subject is going to be the attrition rate or the homestead movement. Is the homestead movement dying? And I would like to get into this discussion. So she's running to find me a holder device so I can set this phone so I have to hold it the whole time because we have a couple things here. Sorry, guys. If you could just give me a sec, I can figure this out. Oh, you know what? Oh, man. So maybe I might have to reset this in a sec. Well, that's good enough. We'll just do it this way and have a bad form for this setup. Sorry. So if you're watching me, we got a weird orientation tonight. That's going to throw me off a bit. But that's okay. The information's good. You can put it in the background and just listen to me chat on YouTube. Facebook, you're our Facebook guys. So we're broadcasting on YouTube at the same time. There's a technical issue. I had to reorient my camera for the YouTube because, I don't know, it was giving me a problem. I guess that's the thing that's happening. And Angela, you can come on in. This is fine. Angela will be coming back in just a sec. So guys, real quick, welcome to the Dinosaur Omelette. My name's Chris, and now I'm actually going to start after that. It's feeble. The camera for YouTube is kind of feeble, but it's set up. Welcome back. So here we are on our Thursday night live. Again, guys, on YouTube. Usually the camera's screwed up and it's upside down, but whatever, it's sideways. So tonight we're going to be talking about the whole homestead movement and its huge popularity and what seems to be a little bit of a waning. And it's kind of a dying out, or at least it perceives as so, and I'm hearing quite a bit. But you guys who are new here, whether you're on Facebook or the YouTube, we're a small hatchery in southern Lancaster County. We had specialized in quail and Angela's silkies now. Your silky chickens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I produce silkies for pets.
Yeah, her puffy chickens for silky chickens and our quail hatching. Mm-hmm. So the quail people have been, I guess in the summer, they have their flocks established, so it's been a little quieter. But if you guys are in the comments, especially on the YouTube, there's a bunch of resources, educational resources we put down there. And I always hawk this thing, this Q&A. It's free, but it'll answer a lot of your questions pertaining to startup with the quail, right? Mm-hmm. An easy to do, get done thing. Yeah. All right. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments section. Be happy to get to them. Anything else about us you'd like to chat about?
No, I mean, we also have our whole grain layer feed that we've been...
Yeah, our layer feed. Let me show you a bag of feed. You know what? We should do another live video. I'll get this YouTube camera set up properly. Our feed, this is actually a bag of blankets to give it volume. But yeah, we mixed together a whole grain non-GMO feed for our chickens. People have been asking about it because we did a lot of research in the nutrition profile of the feed to have a nutrient-dense option that was easy and actually very beneficial to ferment for people. So maybe we'll do another. We did a chicken feed video not long ago.
Yeah.
I guess it was 6-7 months ago. We can do that again and do some poultry nutrition education with that. But today we're talking about the homestead popularity and decline.
And then there's the group of people who are consistent and doing well.
Well, they're the popular guys, or they're the that's us. That's you guys. If you're watching this and you're still homesteading, you're part of that. Like you survive the attrition or dropout rate. That's if you're new, because there's a lot of new people coming into the homesteading. So we're actually. I grew up in the country. You grew up in the middle of nowhere. But we weren't really farmer types. I have a history. We had animals and stuff growing up. but not like a formal homestead.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was a non-working farm that I grew up on. You had some critters.
Yeah, I had a lot of critters.
A lot of critters. What critters did you have as a kid?
Oh, we had chickens, we had ducks at one point, we had horses, goats, of course we had the smaller animals that kids have, rabbits, guinea pigs, rodents. Yeah.
So she had the critters too, which is actually a good experience to transfer as an adult. And that's why I tell families with little kids, get the kids interested in animals, teaches them responsibility, gives them something they can feel that they control in their own life and that they have management over.
Mm-hmm.
Or what's the popular word people like to say? Agency. They have agency over it. So yeah, with the kids being involved with the animals, it preps them for their adulthood if they do have an animal farm, or a homestead, or they're doing something like this. Okay, cool.
Were there any comments?
Probably not. Oh, Susan said hi. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Yeah, Susan, sorry this phone is tilted up. I don't know why they do that to me. YouTube does this. Like every once in a while I'll do a video and I can't orient the screen horizontally or vertically. It's stuck. That's the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. Anyway, I'm going to talk about this homestead popularity. So our little homestead started with everybody else, which was...
Are you referring to 2020?
Which was during the Corona apocalypse. So the COVID came around and everybody got spooked and they started, well, if you all remember, it wasn't that long ago, there was problems with the supply chain, right? And people got a little spooked and they're like, uh-oh.
I think there were a lot of different types of people. There was the group of people who wanted to do homesteading, but for a long time, but weren't in a position to do it. There were people who chose to do it where they were and made where they were work. And so that, whole thing that happened was a good boot in the behind to get some people off and started in a new location or just working, like just dealing with where they are. And then there's a whole bunch of people who were completely new and pursued homesteading.
Yeah, but statistically, according to our friends on the internet, after my thorough research, 30% of new homesteaders were urban or suburbanites who dipped out. So that's 30% of the new homesteaders. And homesteading there's not a lot of actual concrete collated data specifically to the homestead movement because it's really not even thoroughly defined, like what exactly is homesteading. It's got a very broad definition and it kind of encompasses a lot of different lifestyles and behaviors. So it's hard to come by concrete data, but there is like anecdotal data. So like there was a 300% increase in the searching of, online anyway, for self-sufficiency, homestead, and what else was that? Homesteading, self-sufficiency, and self-starting. Right. So anyway, there's a huge surge, a 300% increase in the search of this. There's a 35% increase in the sales of farm goods. So you saw an increase in the sales of these things, an increase of search, an increase of rural properties being sold. It was 20%. It was an increase year over year during this surge time. So a lot of people, anecdotally anyway, we knew were moving out from these urban areas. Plus you saw the attrition rates from the real estate data from the urban areas and from the rural areas where properties were popping up on sale and being swiped up real quick and being particularly sought after because of their rural location for the purpose of facilitating a self-sufficient lifestyle. Everybody was jazzed up about it. It's like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. I'm going to grow a potato.
Yeah.
Yeah? So that's kind of like our personal story. That's what we did. Would you like to talk a little since I've been yapping? Tell them what we did to start here.
We decided we wanted to produce food, and we just started with what we knew first and did research as we got things set up. So that meant we started with chickens because most people have experience even as a child if it's a family member who has chickens. And then we learned about the different animals like the jumbo quail and the rabbits and the meat rabbits and started setting everything up to produce as well as gardens.
Yeah, and also we were intentional with what we were going to do here to try to make it worthwhile. So I had this theory during this whole Corona time. I was like, you know what? There's going to be 3 commodities people want: food, housing, and energy. And so here you have property, we could produce food. So we didn't really produce food. We produced a means to make your own food. The quails.
Yeah, but they did produce food.
I know, but we didn't sell food as a profit.
Oh, no.
For profit.
Right.
We sold the means to produce food. So, and then we got into this kind of education thing, which, you guys, it's free education, good stuff. So education for the production of one's own, food manufacturer at their place. Anyway, I don't want to get too long-winded into this whole what we did story, but just to give you a little bit of background on us and, our experience and our, how we relate to this is there was a vacuum created, people started moving into it, there was this great desire for, what do you call it, self-sufficiency, and people got spooked, there was an element of fear. I mean, everybody's buying toilet paper? Like, that made no sense, but that was a fear response. But other fear responses were, not like they were panicking and having a panic attack, but, I want to be self-sufficient. So they went into these self-sufficient lifestyles, buying the homesteads. And for toilet paper, yeah. Oh, Susan. Yeah, like everybody's going nuts for toilet paper. But, we thought how, at least for us in our position, like, well, what do we want to do here? A lot of people did their homestead just as what do you call it? Just for fun.
Hobby?
Like a hobby farm. Yeah, they weren't doing it. They still had regular jobs or they were doing remote work, and it was a hobby farm.
And just for themselves, which most people would be having a homestead for their own family.
Correct.
To sustain, or not sustain, but help produce for the family food, meat and eggs and such. Yeah. Yeah,
let me pause again. YouTube people, sorry this phone is vertical for some reason. I can't change the orientation. I don't know why it let me do that. Anyway, back talking about the homestead music. So background on the homestead movement, if you guys don't know anything about this, there was this thing called the Homestead Act in May of 1862, in which a citizen who did not bear arms against the United States in conflict, that's in the law, could apply for 160 acres, basically for free. There was a nominal fee, but it was to encourage the western expansion of the United States. So he could put up Kentucky Fried Chickens and all kinds of junk out west. So there was the Homestead movement enacted by the federal government to give 160 acres essentially for free. There were fees associated, but nothing spectacular, for you to go out and homestead the land, raise the land, start cultivating it and creating that western expansion. The thing was, you had to stay there for 5 years before you could get a deed or title. So if you managed to survive the dysentery, remember the Oregon Trail game? Mm-hmm. Everybody died of dysentery. You didn't get eaten by wolves. Native Americans didn't kill you. Whatever, you didn't freeze to death because it was very harsh conditions. Then you got to keep your land and you were established. So this is the Homestead Act of 1862. The land was taken up relatively quickly, and by the turn of the century, it was just the rocks and the unarable, non-growable areas really that were left. So all the good land was taken, and there you go. So we still use the word homestead, but today homestead, and we did another video about this, is pretty fluid. Some people use it in their own definition, right? I'm growing some tomatoes and potatoes, so this is my homestead, which is fine. Like, if that's what you're doing, you're doing
it's like a dwelling that's more than just sleeping in. You're utilizing the space to produce food in some way.
Yeah, your homestead. So again, the word homestead doesn't have a very concrete definition. But some of the things that are inherent to homesteading, self-sufficiency, adapting, resiliency of your facility, skills, you're developing skills, and sustainability too is a huge component. Establishing some sustainability on your property where you're able, whether it's through permaculture or whatever system you're using, you have a sustainable output. I'm growing things get harvested, things die, they reproduce, everything's being used over again, so there's little waste and there's a higher rate of sustainability of the organisms that we have growing here, whatever it is we are doing, even if it's not organisms. Maybe you're doing a skill or something, you're building something there at the homestead, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's a little bit of this background. Ma'am, any input?
No.
No? Are you screwed up by the camera?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, we got one sideways camera. So, the homestead explosion. It was COVID time, and there was a surge of newcomers. And people with very little experience or no experience. But they had this passion to go do this thing. And anybody out there who's been doing this for a while knows the reality of what this entails. And this is kind of what the brunt of this conversation is about. Why was there this attrition occurring when people were fulfilling this big dream? Like, oh, I want to live independently on a homestead. Mm-hmm. What do you think scared them off?
Well, first off, a lot of decisions were made out of, like Christopher mentioned, fear or just emotions. And moving or abruptly changing one's lifestyle based on emotions that's not, that it's like spur of the moment and stuff without a ton of planning, that can make it difficult to sustain your focus.
Momentum.
Yeah, your momentum. And then also there's a lot of people who were city dwellers, maybe in the suburbs, and didn't have, maybe had zero experience with homesteading, or maybe had some experience.
Which comes with zero skills, so you got to develop them all.
So, and then also it's a lot of work. Like whatever you're doing is it's work. Typically homesteading involves living creatures, whether that's plants or animals. And those creatures depend on us to grow and be nourished and tended to, protected. And also they require, building structures or building a lot, even gardens, like building the beds and taking care of the soil. So it's work.
Yeah. Just as an aside, like she's saying, the product I think is 10% of the effort. Like the chicken is 10%, 90% is the infrastructure, the feeding, the timing, like all that. The garden, the plants growing, that's probably even less than that. It's probably like 5%, 95% of it is the prep and the work associated with keeping the things living. But you want to do it so things are efficient. But
right. But then also, like, the world kind of shut down, during that time. So all of a sudden, people's day-to-day lifestyle did change, and time was something that a lot of people did have. And then once things started, opening up again and going, then a lot of people, have to juggle full-time jobs on top of, their homesteading and working on the animals in the garden. So that's, that's quite the lifestyle adjustment. And energy output and rest and stuff can be challenging in that situation. And then also just the type of property or the location you're in, for people who perhaps didn't do a lot of research on where they were relocating, if they were doing that, could have been some unforeseen expenses or difficulties with the new area. Could be, the soil type or just available resources.
Yeah, some of the things that were very good, ma'am. Thank you. Some of the issues people were having, and you got to think about this, the financial planning and the economy at the time too. People are losing their job, businesses are shutting down, regional zones are losing their economic vibrancy. So let's say I'm moving from location A 50 miles away to my homestead at location B. where now 20% of the residents are either losing income or many losing jobs and work. So the regional economies were affecting these homesteads financially. So people had them and unfortunately dipped out. They had to leave. They're like, we can't afford this location right now anymore. And that's kind of sad because a lot of that, again, wasn't even their own doing. It was just the economic climate.
And it could have even been too, like, this is just now smaller things, but just family situations with health and such, like with the whole 2020 thing, there's a lot of chaos going on amongst families, health-wise and such, and different, changes could have occurred because of that.
Now, to put it succinctly, so this whole conversation, this whole talk can be summed up in a basic sentence. It was not what people expected. Mm-hmm. The amount of work and the amount of effort that goes in and the unforeseen things that are happening on the homestead, it's not like Instagram. It's not pretty photographs with the filters and people happy. It's, again, it's like 5% is little Instagram photos and happy chicken stuff, but 95% was a lot of hard work, waking up in the middle of the night because something happened. Chickens are getting eaten by foxes, right? Bad weather, freezing conditions.
Cleaning manure. And
if you were outside on the East Coast or most of the United States in the last week, you got to go out and it's 105 degrees. You're overheating and the animals are overheating. So this is 2024, very comfortable living conditions. Okay, people are doing this 150 years ago with their free land with no one to help. But, these harsh, relatively anyway from experience, these harsh conditions kind of squeeze people out. Like, what am I doing? Why am I putting in all these dozens of hours to produce, a relatively low commercial value of output? This doesn't make sense and it's too much work and effort. And they split.
And there was
all the attrition because
there
was
a lot of the
financial stuff,
buying the animal before having the structure,
poor planning,
and maybe just overburdening, overloading oneself.
Poor planning. Well, we do a lot of talk about that. Goal setting, objectives, planning appropriately so you're not demoralized and doing exactly that. Just I quit because it becomes overwhelming and you can only have so much on your plate. People have jobs, they have kids, they have school, they have this and that, and car problems, and all kinds of issues. So those substantial burdens that people have not experienced before and didn't have, planned for or expectation really drove a lot of people out. Now that's bad, but it's also good because that means the people who remained, they're the troopers. You guys, the resilient group. It was actually a very effective filtration system. I don't want to talk down about anybody as a filtration system, but I'm saying it really did filter out the most resilient people and the most focused to this, to that culture and that lifestyle who sustained, even though it's a lot of work, because they put their mindset in a place where that made the most sense.
I do have to say though, for the people who didn't last and maybe were completely new, I do think it is positive that a lot of people, started to learn new skills, maybe just got brave and pursued the homesteading or just the self-sufficiency skills in general. And even if they didn't last, like, that's still valuable because I'm sure they learned stuff about themselves. Maybe they're going to pursue it down the road in the future, and actually do planning. But I'm just a fan of people growing and learning about themselves and concerning skills.
Well, for sure, like, that's our main deal here. That's why we do these videos, even with the crooked YouTube one. That's why we do these, to encourage you guys so you have a sense of community and it emboldens your resiliency. So when it's, oh my God, it's pouring down rain and the chicken thing's getting flooded and it's cold, I don't want to go out, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I know. Nobody wants to do that, but you still do it anyway. And that's actually why where we are now in that whole homestead community is pretty good, because the people who went through that whole hardship learning curve, if you were new anyway, you got through that hump and you're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to quit. I keep going. And that's really exceptional, because that's a particular trait you can transfer in any aspect of your life. Like, I don't quit. Okay, yeah, goat had a broken leg, or fence got ripped open by a cow charging. I'm still going to deal with it and not go crazy and want to quit. So this was a great filter, I think, anyway, and that's pretty much the consensus. So, in short, the homestead movement did die for a lot of people. They couldn't, either financially it was unfeasible, regionally it presented a lot of issues weather-wise, or just commute for work. But I think the brunt of it was a difficult lifestyle. And you do hear this quite often, like, it's a difficult lifestyle, I wasn't planning for. Things happen, people have medical issues too coming up, and that work is hard. So there were a lot of preventatives that happened.
Yeah, and when we say, that it's hard work, we're not putting like anyone down or making anyone feel weak or anything like that. It truly is, it's a lot to take care of, especially like Christopher just mentioned, having family and having work as well to take care of and tend to and do, and balance.
It's kind of neat, because on paper, this is one of those things. That's why it was such a popular idea to just split. On paper, it looks like a simple thing. Oh, I get a house, I put some animals there, I put a fence and a little shed, they'll do good. I want to grow vegetables. How do you grow vegetables? You put seeds in the ground? Yeah, okay, right? It sounds easy to somebody who's not experienced, but then they went out and learned and either accepted the learning curve and the effort that went with it, or sought the path of least resistance, which is, people do that, that's okay. But again, in conclusion, it demonstrates if people were sticking to the hard work, one's resiliency and ability to persevere. And I'm not saying we have to be Superman, and not to even talk about it or brag about it. It's just, this is a component of who we are. There was a different component in other people, and it's okay. Everything's okay. Everybody got where they were. But the homestead movement, as far as the attrition rate and the decline of people participating and people selling their little farm properties, that's okay, because now you have a more solid, unified, homogenous community that you should feel more comfortable speaking to. I mean, if you go online, you're always going to have idiots. You don't have to worry about that. You're always going to have a goofball telling you why you're doing things wrong. But you do have a more homogenized, tight-knit, I believe, community that you can relate to and reach out to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is true. There's a lot of discussion about this. So if you go to any of these like homestead kind of functions or small farm forums, people are very open and they're very conversational, and you'll notice you have quite a lot in common with them.
And I think that the commonality really, comes to the having those similar goals that the people in this type of community have. Like the goals are similar, and their focus and their whys, like why they're doing it, is pretty similar. And yeah, you definitely build community and connections when you have that.
Yeah, so I want to talk about, I think that was thorough.
Yeah.
Again, guys, I'm not winging this. I did data research. It's very hard to get data specifically about homesteads, because again, there's no definition for homestead.
And we're looking at pretty recent,
So
years.
the data you can go by is anecdotal, but it's more going to be like participation online, like search history, like what are people looking for, what is trending year to year, and what people are looking for. And you saw a huge surge, a 300% year over year surge in the homestead movement online anyway, in searching and research during 2020. And then you saw a decline going back to normal levels over the last year or two, previous or prior to the whole COVID thing. And with it, everybody went, and a lot of the people who remained, people who were new, went through that learning curve and suffered and endured. they're stuck around. That's good. So they're here, and now you have a bunch of skills. So stuff I'd like to talk about. Anything before I go on to this next important part?
I don't think so.
Attributes of the modern homesteader. Attributes of the homesteader or small farmer or farmetter or whatever you want to call yourself. Doesn't really matter. You're growing a tomato, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. But you're the person who says, I want a self-sufficient lifestyle. I don't want to be so dependent on old Mr. Modern world and infrastructure. So that's you guys. So some of the things and please, in the comments, if you have something to add, I would love to hear it. I really enjoy other people's opinions, especially if they're counter or you have something like, you want to discuss. I always like other opinion. So I think, again, the primary issue, condition is the self-sufficiency, the desire for self-sufficiency and independence.
Yeah.
This is a mindset. Yeah? I mean, it is a mindset. So a self-sufficient mindset where you want to grow your own things, raise your own critters, be not so dependent on an outside. You guys are the problem people. That's what it is, because we question things. So we're the problem people, because we don't go along with everything.
Oh, the flow.
We try to think things for ourselves. I'm not going to listen. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to think for myself. I'm a self-sufficient person. I have to figure the problem out for myself. At least let me have an opinion on this. Give me the information so I can make a decision. So we're self-sufficient. Adaptable. Homesteaders are adaptable. We have an adaptability. Problem comes up, you shift. Can you cover example? I'm putting her on the spot. She doesn't like it when I put her on the spot.
No, I don't.
I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
Fixing things that
something
break,
happens.
Or
whatever. Like you might have a prize chicken used for breeding gets killed or something by a fox or something like this. Or
power outage and,
you got to figure out how to deal with that. Yeah, adaptability. Problems come up, so we constantly have to problem solve. Self-sufficiency, adaptability, resilience, and that's kind of like the whole talk about this homestead attrition issue was the resiliency factor. People have resiliency in different ways in different areas, and in the homesteading, maybe somebody didn't. Maybe they're like, oh, not what I expected, and there was a lot of that, not what I expected, and people split.
Yeah, and the people who continue, like you just mentioned, they're adaptable, they're resilient, they're problem solvers. And a lot of people can be that, but that persistence, that focus is part of it too.
This one's further down the list, but I think it's a bigger one. Financial prudence. It's a nice way of saying cheap.
Not cheap. No. It's being wise. Being
wise with money and repurposing stuff. Like I did a whole thing with what do you call it? Pallets. Like building our chicken coops from pallets. And they turn out phenomenal. I mean, they're solid as a rock and they're cheap. But, you're financially prudent, especially with your new homestead, because you're putting money into a lot of stuff, and no shame in this. People are everywhere struggling, so you're trying to get by with, well, I'm got to make do with this, and maybe I'm using a fencing I don't want to use, but it'll do for now.
But then sometimes it's even better what you fashion up with tools or materials that you have on your property, or that you're able to get, low cost.
Yeah, you're learning how to cut costs. That's a skill too.
Because you're thinking outside of, the box, outside of the norm. So you're problem solving in the way of like, well, how can I make this work? And then in that process, thinking of new ideas to look at something, which could then be much better than originally thought.
Yeah, so financial responsibility, financial prudence, being aware of your finances, that is a huge thing. Because you're an adaptable, I think this goes with the mentality of the skills of adaptability. You give me $20, I'm going to make it function as efficiently as possible, or I'm going to adapt that budget. I think that's what that financial prudence really is. I think those two really do go hand in hand, adaptability, financial prudence, because you're working within the confines of a certain, breadth of spending. And I'm going to plan it, see what I can do, see what resources I can gather for that plan, and execute it as responsibly as possible with my budget that I have. Does that make sense? That's an adaptable thing. All right. 2 more. I think I'll just talk about 2 more, and then I'm going to go because this camera's driving me nuts being sideways. Okay. And these are 2 huge ones. Or maybe 3 I'll talk about. Skill development. If you're talking about being, cutting costs, you have to develop skills. You want to develop skills because this goes hand in hand with self-sufficiency. Why am I calling this guy on the phone to do a task that I can learn how to do, and I may not be, as proficient as the guy over there I'm just going to call, but at least now I have a skill I can do over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's lasting skills. That's something you learn and use, and then you can teach your children.
I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's full-grown adults who don't know how to wash their own clothes. Mm-hmm. You heard of this?
Yeah.
No offense, young people out there, you young people, but simple tasks of daily living, simple skill sets. People haven't changing a tire. People don't know how to do that. They'll call the truck to come change it for them. So skill development is a key attribute, I believe, of the modern homesteader or of any homesteader or mechanic. Like anybody who has to be self-sufficient, you have to develop these skills to have an efficiently running, homestead. You want to know how to do this stuff. And thankfully, because we're in a community, you can reach out and there's resources available and there's learning available to develop these skills. Yeah. Gardening, for example, huge skill. Takes a long time to learn. But there's a community, like you can go online all the time.
On YouTube or
the Facebook.
Yeah.
What are the other friendly groups? Local neighborhood groups, especially with real live living humans, 3-dimensional, in person. You want to talk to them.
Workshops.
Yeah, get together with your community. So skill development is a huge component of homesteading, and it goes hand in hand with the self-sufficiency. And again, this contributed to the whole attrition rate. I don't want to learn all these new skills. I don't want to have to do that. People are so used to push-button pill mentality. Like, I just want to do one thing and have it done. How much does it cost to have this up and running? It doesn't work that way. Okay?
Yeah, everything's a process.
Yeah, it is a process, and you're going to have to deal with it, and it's totally counter to the whole point of the thing. This is a very intimate kind of endeavor, the homesteading. You're involved hands-on with the animals, you're involved hands-on with the plants, you're involved hands-on when things flourish or die, okay? So it's an intimate occupation, and you can't just click and have something done. You have to be involved. You're welcome to... Are you waiting?
Yes.
I'm just talking too much. All right, skill development we talked about.
The health and wellness.
I think that is a huge part of this.
It is.
Well-being, like the health and wellness of the individual.
That's a huge
Speak
part
on this,
of a lot of people's whys is
why they're doing the homestead.
We have become, we as in, society, normal people have become much more educated, more aware of the fact that the government isn't necessarily thinking about our well-being as far as our physical health with the pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff, and even the agricultural side of things. And we've learned much more about the chemicals that are sprayed or put into or antibiotics onto vegetables, plants, animals, and a lot of homesteading people or people who want to do self-sufficiency are just much more aware of their bodies and what they're putting into them.
I'm not even sitting on the fence with this at all. The food that we're fed is toxic poison and it's killing us. There's conspiracy theorists. Oh, that's fine. But the food that we get in grocery stores is literally contributing to the mass death of most of Americans in the United States. It's a fact.
If you have any doubts, just find a few items that are pre-packaged, pre-made, and they're in packages, and do research. Just do a quick search on what those hard to pronounce words mean, what they are, and what they do.
Yeah, we just did a video on like whole foods and nutrition because it's so integral to the whole homestead kind of mentality. You want to be healthy, you want to be in the sun, you want to touch the dirt, you want to be exposed to what a human being is supposed to be exposed to and experience vibrant life. And you don't do that eating at McDonald's and sitting at a desk all day long.
Mm-hmm. So what you eat, we've heard many times, you know, like what you eat affects how you feel, how you function, because you're a living, you know, creature, and your whole body
Constantly
works together,
rebuilding itself.
But it needs the right things. Just like we're all, you know, everyone who has animals, even plants, like we're all learning and understand the needs of the animals and plants that we raise and grow, that they have specific nutritional needs, and same with us. So the health and wellness part is wanting to eat, you know, foods that you know that the animals have been raised happy and healthy. You know that they're not full of antibiotics or been consuming chemicals. Your plants aren't sprayed all over with really horrible chemicals. You know what's in your food. You watched it, you interacted with it, and you know when you eat it, you're going to feel really good, and it's going to taste really good.
Little FYI, which is really fascinating. So you go to the grocery store and you get sterilized food. It's sterilized most of the time. It's extremely washed, sprayed. Sometimes they even use disinfectants on the produce. Now your garden food, you know when you see a little worm, people are like, oh, there's a worm in there. Well, your garden food, let's get rid of the visible worms. It's covered in microscopic organisms. And again, this is fascinating, wonderful science. And these organisms that you're exposed to, they become part of you, actually, because you're ingesting them, and your body's going to start recognizing them. It's a whole interior microbiome. It's really fascinating science. So you're eating these critters from the garden. Of course, you're getting more vitamins and minerals, especially if you have healthy soil. You know, you're working with a living soil. Mm-hmm. But it's very interesting stuff. But health and wellness is definitely a cornerstone, an extremely important point of a lot of homesteaders' reasons for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. We're not just disconnecting from, and it's not like a crazy countercultural movement. We're not stupid people, you know. We're savvy. We do a little reading. We educate ourselves. We don't believe everything. We do a little, digging. And it's like, oh, okay. I don't want to be attached to that because I understand the quality of my life is not determinant upon what television shows I'm watching or, on an external party and their judgment there of me. My quality of life is determined upon how I define myself and how I express that definition. Okay? And doing this to Homestead, yeah, it's a lot of work. But again, I'm whom I'm supposed to be, right? I'm living here out in wherever it is, and the suffering, yes, I recognize nobody wants to go out in 105-degree heat, sweating to death, coming in smelling like a mule, okay? But we still go out sweating to death and do this hard work because this is an extension of self. This is a very, very important psychological component of what we are as human beings. And a lot of that was never embraced with the homesteaders that kind of split. They didn't incorporate it as to becoming part of the self. It was not an extension of self. It was secondary. It was like, oh, I got to go do this. It was like, no, I'm tending to myself when I do this. Mm-hmm. Those things are part of me now. And it's and people don't make this connection, like verbalize it like that. I think it's very much more subconscious. When people make this association, like this is an extension of me. So, yeah, the whole, that component of what we're doing should be recognized, I think, regularly. And that brings you back to your, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. What's my objective? Why am I doing this? Oh, it's not to save some money on tomatoes, because I'm actually probably spending, economically speaking, a lot more to get my tomatoes. There's a whole much deeper reason that I'm doing this that provides meaning to my existence, that I derive great value from. Mm-hmm. And, I teach to others. And that's what I'm doing here. Like, we do this to impart some experience, words of encouragement, and to teach useful skills to you guys. Like, this one's more of a talk, but there's we do a lot of these teaching videos. But yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I don't want to sound like I'm rambling, but I'm passionate about this. You guys should be passionate about life, passionate about things, have conviction about things and be convicted like, oh yeah, I am going to, it doesn't bring pleasure. It's like it doesn't bring joy. It doesn't fulfill us to be halfway on some stuff. All right. I think that just about does it. Oh, the last thing I wanted to mention about the attributes of a homesteader is that we enjoy the home. That's why we're doing that. We like the whole idea of what we're creating in this home, not just the plants and animals, but the home becomes its own entity unto itself with its own attributes, characteristics, and almost a spirit, if you will, like its own kind of personality. This is my home.
Mm-hmm. And it becomes like your mini haven, you know, where you feel restful. Like even though you're doing work and such, you are your spirit is fed, your soul, you're feeding yourself because you're outside, you're getting fresh air, you're getting vitamin D, you're seeing the sun, you're seeing the green, and it's relaxing.
It certainly is. Okay, yeah, so I think that'll wrap it up because this telephone being sideways. Sorry, YouTube people, again, for being in a vertical video. I don't know why that was. Appreciate anybody who stopped by. Facebook people, thanks for coming in. If you have any questions or suggestions for anything in the future, drop it down in the comments. But I hope this was useful. If you're still watching and if you're continuing to pursue this lifestyle, please do. If you're getting overwhelmed, reach out to your community, not your spouse. Don't dump all your did I dump all my problems on you? No. Not to your spouse or somebody you're with all the time, but reach out to your community because those people who
have a fresh perspective.
They have a different perspective. They've probably been through even worse, like the stressors. Like, what are we stressing about? Money, right? Everybody's stressing about money. I got to pay bills for this. I got this to do. What? Am I encroaching?
Yeah.
So, or whatever's going on, animal, whatever your issue is. It's going to be a challenge, so don't keep it bottled up and go wacky. Reach out and talk to your community.
Yeah, and then of course there's always lots of people on the internet that have a lot of people like to share things that they've learned and conquered or just like ideas, and you might just need like a fresh look at things, and maybe also if you're feeling overwhelmed with the burden of whatever you're doing, then it's okay to downsize slightly and
for sure, man.
Get yourself going again, and then to get your momentum.
Yeah, everybody gets older. You got medical things. You got injuries coming up. You can't handle everything. That's extremely common. I mean,
there's all sorts of the neat thing about the homesteading and self-sufficiency is that there's so many options of things you can do to benefit your health, benefit your well-being. Just because maybe you're doing something a certain way, or raising certain animals, or raising certain plants, there's so many other things you could be, you could also raise or alter that would make your life a little easier. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, I love it. There's so many different beneficial animals. There's pros and cons to everything. Yeah.
I think that'll do it. All right. So cool. Guys, thanks for stopping in. It was a little off tonight because of these two cameras. One's horizontal and the other one's vertical, which is driving me a little nuts, but whatever. Not a big deal. Hope to see you again. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. Or, reach out to us on the old Facebook. It's a small channel, so we can get to you. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodnight and push off all my goodnight buttons. I think I'm just about done. Yeah, see you guys. Thanks for coming in.